Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is another fine, lovely Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. I am your host, executive producer of Light Thief Productions, James Jackson, he, they pronouns. And we're coming to you on a relatively nice morning. The good news for the day, we'll do some Philadelphia election coverage, and the AP has officially declared that incumbent prosecutor Larry Krasner won the district attorney nomination for the Democratic Party of Philadelphia. That doesn't necessarily mean he won the race, which happens in November, the actual election, which happens in November, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Other things that we're covering today, grifters. We're gonna make the whole episode about grifters because they're, it's the city of Philadelphia. There's a lot of them. And we added a couple more to the list this week by inviting good old Talcum X to come to the city and support Mr. Krasner in his bid to win the nomination to continue his job as district attorney. We'll be talking about the Philadelphia Police Department's favorite puppet, and we'll be talking about how grifters like these make money from us, just the regular everyday citizens who are just trying to get along in the world. So I don't have any special guests for you today. If you're not interested in any of those topics, I apologize. We don't have our normal arts coverage this week. It's a slow week in the Philadelphia arts scene, having just completed Philadelphia Theater Week, and so nobody has anything really opening this week, and so we don't have any arts guests for you today. But I'll start with a little Philadelphia arts news, Philadelphia related arts news. The city of Philadelphia, the office of the mayor, has proposed their budget, and in their proposed budget, they have proposed to restore to nearly pre-pandemic levels funding for the office of the Philadelphia Cultural Fund. But not the OACCE. They've also funded the African American Museum and the Museum of Art here in Philadelphia, and a few other cultural institutions at nearly pre-pandemic levels. The 2 to 3% cut, but when you're talking numbers this small, that doesn't actually make much of a difference. The numbers of the dollars that we use to support the arts here in Philadelphia are woefully small, ridiculously so when you look at them in comparison to other major cities. Philadelphia is a major city. We're the founding city of the country. As far as the current government goes, this is where the government was formed. This is where all of the source of our laws were written. It was colonial settlerism that created those laws, and therefore created a lot of the systemic problems that we face today. However, that doesn't detract from the importance of the city of Philadelphia in both the past and the present. This city is a very important place for the arts. It is a place that allows people to interact and connect. It's often the phrase has been used, the biggest small city. Also used as the poorest big city, but in the fact that it is relatively easy within the city of Philadelphia to connect to anyone, no matter how big or large their or small their profile in the public sphere. It's a awesome city to work in the arts. Um, I've worked in the arts for most of my career, and you know, I wouldn't be in the arts if I didn't live in Philadelphia. I've lived and worked in other cities, New York, LA, Seattle. It doesn't, it's not the same as other cities. This is one of the few cities where you can come in and instantly find a community that is willing to work with you and talk with you, and take you at value as a valuable member, regardless of what anybody else says. It's one of the Philly attitudes. You know, I'm gonna judge you for who you are, who I think you are, rather than trust what somebody else says about you. So in that vein, it's really important for Philadelphia in the wider national and international arts scene to continue to exist as an artist city. Um, Aside from, you know, the import of Philadelphia in that scene, there is also the fact that we are a major city, you know, and important in the national and international scene as far as politics goes. Um, and over the course of the last 20 years or so, the city of Philadelphia has been at the forefront of using the arts to bolster and improve both its economy and its standing as far as how people view the city, how people view the livability of the city, how the city works and thrives. Um, I just attended this morning a breakfast with the mayor, and though my question didn't get asked or answered, I will ask it here. The city of Chicago just created a program to directly invest in individual artists $60 million into individual artists as part of their economic recovery program from the pandemic. My question is, where is that program here in the city of Philadelphia? That's what we've been asking for, 1% for the arts. 1% of our $6 billion budget would be 60 million and would be a huge boost to the economy. Just to, I'm these are well trodden facts. These are well trodden statistics that I'm about to roll out here, and you probably all know them if you've dealt with me in any sort of way, or talked to me at any amount of length. And you know, politicians have probably all heard them before, but they bear repeating. The amount of money that the city of Philadelphia invests in the arts has a 3,000% return on investment. That's not a typo. That's not an error in calculation. That's not a rounding. It's a 3,000% ROI. In other words, every dollar that the city spends brings $3,000 in economic impact to the city of Philadelphia. Literally every dollar that the city spends, it gets back in taxes. When investing in the arts here in Philadelphia, history has proven time and again that it's a valuable investment, a great way for the city to increase its viability, increase its livability, get new people in, and do it all while earning money, while creating a valuable economy. Why is that so important? Why is it so important? Why do we always harp on the economy? You know, there's gun violence, there's this, there's that. There's you know, people who are homeless. There's any number of problems that you can think of become easier to solve when a city's economy is moving in a positive direction. So that's why people often harp on the economy and the economic feasibility of a city like the city of Philadelphia. An interesting thing about this $60 million pledge from the city of Chicago is that Chicago is often used as a corollary to the city of Philadelphia. Similar sized budgets, similar sized police departments, similar sized murder rates, problems with gun violence, similar problems and similar sized economic input and populations. So when looking at the city of Chicago, it's often both back and forth. Philadelphia is often compared to Chicago as far as, hey, the murder rate in Philadelphia is worse than Chicago, or hey, the murder rate in Chicago is worse than Philadelphia. How is Chicago looking at their very similar escalation in the murder rate over the past year and saying, hey, let's invest in the arts economy and maybe that'll help solve it? I don't know. I've been communicating that message to the elected officials in the city of Philadelphia for what feels like hundreds of years now. It's really only probably a dozen or so. Some would say effectively. I've definitely noticed an impact as far as how city council members talk with me, those who know who I am on a first name basis, and will answer my phone calls or not answer them depending on whether they want to be dealing with me on that particular day. So, you know, I feel like this message has been communicated, so why isn't it getting through? I don't have the answers to that, unfortunately. I don't know how better to communicate the message that the arts economy is intrinsic to the city of Philadelphia, and the arts are intrinsic to Philadelphia, and that this city will not recover, will not make itself better without spending on the arts, and that spending needs to be commensurate with what other major cities in the US and around the world spend on the arts, which is on average about 1% of their yearly budget they spend on the arts and arts programs. So that's my little arts update. It's 10:17. I just wanted to, you know, cover the arts here in Philadelphia for that few minutes, and let you know that the arts the arts budget isn't set in stone. The budget decisions of the city of Philadelphia are ongoing. Feel free to sign up to give testimony at any of the ongoing hearings and city council meetings that city council is holding to try and hear from members of the public about what they consider most important in the city of Philadelphia. Um, it, it may be a broken record to them by now, but I guess the only way to get the message through that we actually need money in this sector of the economy is to keep telling them, because they keep forgetting. So let's move on to a little bit of election coverage. The Associated Press has, like I said, declared incumbent Philadelphia prosecutor Larry Krasner the winner of the primary here in Philadelphia. That's good news. So, you know, changes to the prosecutorial system take time. A single term for the office of prosecutor may not be enough time to make those changes, to adjust the system, to make it work on behalf of the citizens of Philadelphia. You can find the current election count on philadelphiavotes.com. I'm actually going there right now. Sorry, it's hard to type and talk at the same time. Yep, philadelphiavotes.com. Still typed it wrong. They may be having a little bit of difficulty in serving their pages this morning because they are, of course, being inundated with people trying to get the information on the voting and election count. But the polls, the live election results are right up there. You can click on any of them. They actually have some neat new features this year with a live tracker and a scroller that you can set up to view things that are of particular concern to you. Just for reference, currently Larry Krasner is the projected winner in the Democratic District Attorney contest for the primary with 103,000 votes versus 55,000 for Carlos Vega, his FOP-supported opponent. And that ties right into the subject of today, grifters. You know, we've talked about right-wing grifters here on the channel before. We've talked about folks who take advantage of regular citizens and tell them what they want to hear in exchange for fame and money. I mean, sure, it's funny coming from somebody who literally goes on camera every Wednesday to talk about current events and politics, as well as arts information, so that you all tune in. But I hope I'm not just telling you what you want to hear. I'm talking as a black man in Philadelphia, trying to bring the viewpoint of Black Philadelphia to the general public, not trying to get your money or, you know, tell you what you want to hear just for the sake of saying it. But there are people who have recently come to the city of Philadelphia that are doing just that. And of course, I'm referencing Talcum X. You know, Jeffrey Sean King. You know, I hate to call him Mr. King because it's I don't even know that that's his real name. Like, how do we figure out who this guy is? There's a lot of receipts on the internet about, you know, who Sean King is, the various harms he's done to various communities, particularly Black and femme communities. The fact that every time he says he's raising money for someone or for a specific cause and the money is going into his hands, it tends to get redirected somehow, or that effort tends to fail somehow. And I say fail in quotes because it's not that these efforts don't make money, it's that the money gets allocated in ways that don't help the intended direction of the donations. You know, this is a problem in all donation categories to nonprofit organizations. Sometimes, you know, they'll have a board or a leader, like a president who takes the money and does what they want with it rather than what the people donating the money want to do with it. Or you know, they'll set high salaries for themselves. And as early on in my career, I was doing a project for a nonprofit organization, a rather famous nonprofit organization here in the city, which has faced some pushback in the last few years, but I won't name that organization. At any rate, I will say that that they have a specific color that they tend to use primarily in their marketing, and a rather salacious slogan that they use to raise money. At any rate, if you don't know who that is, I'm sure you can figure it out. The president of that company was talking to me because I was, you know, debating how much to charge them. I said directly to him, you know, like, this is the first time I've ever worked with a nonprofit organization as a service provider. You know, what should I do? You know, I normally charge quite a lot for my services. But I like you guys and I like what you stand for. You know, what should I do? And his quote to me, I'm sure he's no longer the president, this was many years ago, was nonprofit doesn't mean no profit. Sure. It doesn't. People who work for nonprofits still have to earn a living. They still have to make money. They still have to provide for themselves. And nonprofits do have other sources of income, and they need to spend that income because they are nonprofit organizations. Where that becomes a problem is when those nonprofit leaders and organizers take ridiculously high salaries for themselves, or as in the case of some of the receipts on Sean King, take that money and allocate it towards services provided by their spouses or other members of their family, as in the case of Mr. Trump. Former President Trump, grifter in chief. I mean, he's he definitely is amongst the people that really figured these systems out in the 80s, and is chief amongst the people who in the current generation use these systems to their advantage, having had several nonprofit nonprofit organizations and charities that don't end up giving any money to their intended destination, but actually give money to the organizers and people running the nonprofit organization, which happen to be the nonprofit organizer's family. Oh, look, we have Juliana as a guest. Welcome, Juliana. I'll bring Juliana up in a second after she's done connecting. So yeah, hold on one second. Oh, it's not Juliana. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah, hold on one second. Folks can't hear you. Give me 1 second. Well, let me bring you up on the gallery window. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I've been here before. My pronouns are he, him, they, them, whichever you prefer. It doesn't really matter to me that much. I am a IATSE Local 8 stagehand. So if you go see a show in Philly, chances are we build it. That's what we do for a living. So
awesome. So welcome back to the coffee break chat. I'm just trying to get it up on screen so that folks can see you and see me.
Oh, nobody wants to see that.
No, nobody wants to see me either. It's cool. So
sorry I'm late dropping in. I was eating my breakfast and all that good stuff.
No worries. Yeah, we were talking about grifters this morning. Talcum X is my target of the day. He was brought to the city this week so that he could help Larry Krasner with his campaign. And I don't know how much help that is. I don't know if folks really find the presence of a grifter like Talcum X to be compelling in a local election. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, I truthfully don't know a ton about Talcum X, so I don't feel super qualified to speak on him individually. What I can say is that, especially given the state of national politics recently as a whole and how much grifting has been going on with that, I would severely hope at the very least that people are going to be pretty resistant to that type of campaigning and politicking and that type of thing. So, my theory there is that it probably is not super helpful, especially given the context of national politics right now, to have somebody that's engaging in grifting or grifting adjacent practices. Do you want to give me just a teeny bit of background on this guy, or I can actually look him up real quick?
Sure. Sean King is who we affectionately call Talcum X, and Sean King is a vocal proponent of various causes.
Just the first page of Google here, and one of the first articles that comes up about this Sean King gentleman is Sean King's wife Ray confirms both his parents are white. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that at some point he did a Rachel Dolezal. Is that ultimately where we're going to get to? That's extremely not helpful. It's extremely not helpful.
He's definitely been accused of not necessarily being what he claims to be. Yeah, so and sorry to everybody on the watching, just having a few little problems here with my normal setup, but there we go. There's Chris and there's me, and for some reason OBS is acting really wonky today. At any rate, yeah, so he does have two white parents. He has accused publicly his mother of sleeping around around the time that he was conceived, and therefore
Wow.
accused his mother of cheating on his father, and that's why he's black, because his father is not his biological father is not his dad, and therefore.
So I just like, excuse me if this is like insensitive to point out, but isn't that also sort of playing off the like deadbeat black dad stereotype
yes,
too?
that is the
I
trope.
wanted to make sure like that was like, wait, what triangle here, buddy? Like, yeah, that's something special, man. Yeah, yeah, I think like Krasner had a pretty uphill battle as it was, in a lot of ways. Like a lot of people seem to falsely correlate the DA's office with crime rates, as if like the DA can control anything about people committing crimes, as if that's even the DA's job to do.
No, the DA's job is to prosecute crimes once they're committed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, I think people are looking at the high crime rates in Philadelphia, and they're failing to consider at least two things when it comes to Krasner. Is one, he doesn't really have any direct control, nor is it his job to really control crime in that sense. And two, crime rates are going up everywhere in the nation. Like, this isn't like, you can't like point to this and go like, oh, Krasner's policies did all this, when it's happening in all of these other places that Krasner is not the DA at.
And it's happening at the same rate. Interestingly, so there's the what you're referencing there is some data that we've pushed out, but it was done by some investigative journalists who crunched the numbers and figured out that regardless of DA party or policy, the crime rate is going up at the same rate based on previous crime rate in the same manner everywhere. So not whole numbers, but like by percentage. So if
right, yeah,
if a place had 100 crimes last year, they have 130 this year. If they had 1,000 crimes last year, they have 1,300 this year. And that's across the board. All the cities across the nation are having very similar results. And when you graph them out, it's very clear that if you do a point graph and do the average trend line, that crime rate is just going up everywhere because of the pandemic. It's not prosecutorial style that has any effect.
Well, the pandemic and just all kinds of other sort of like social conditions that are leading people to not be able to afford rent, electricity, whatever, their bills, all that stuff. Like, not to sound too typical lefty here, but like I'm very much pointing to dialectical materialism in this. Like, hey, maybe it's not just about like what laws we have are enforced, but hey, maybe there's something else driving this this surge in crime, and maybe it's the fact that there's a shitload of economic inequality. Sorry, misspoke. That is just getting worse and worse. But it's a lot. I think it's a lot easier to go like, well, the DA is not doing a good job, because people like to have like a nice, easy, they like to have somebody to blame, instead of like realizing that maybe it's everything we're doing that's leading to this problem, and it's not just one guy.
And that's why the topic today is grifters, because that's what grifters do, is they point at a topic, and they say the thing that they think that their audience wants to hear, and that is the problem with folks like Sean King. That's the problem with folks like Donald Trump. That's the problem with folks like John McNesby. McNesby is I I don't know what his deal is, who hurt him, like if he got touched inappropriately when he was a kid, or I don't know, that's probably rude to say, but I just don't know what his problem is, what his deal is. He doesn't seem to be able to analyze the public, and analyze what's going on right in front of his face, and come up with a way to interact with other human beings.
Well, I think that's assuming that he has any interest in that. Like, I think that maybe if you're wondering what McNesby's problem is, it's that, like, he's probably on some level has some sociopathic tendencies and just doesn't really actually care that much about the people that the Philadelphia Police Department are, in theory, supposed to be protecting and serving. I mean, he's the head of the union, so his primary job is to care about police officers, but he does it at the expense of the community. And that's like neither surprising nor is it like really all that enlightening that I'm bringing it up. But I think when you get kind of cut to the quick of it, it's just like he doesn't care. That's why he doesn't have any interest in learning better ways to interact with the community, because it's not a priority of his. Or at least so much as my observations of his words and behavior.
I think his priority is him.
That's it.
That's where the grifting comes in. I think that we unfortunately, as a city that has really a single party system, which, so before somebody jumps on me and says, oh no, we have elections, we have a two-party system. City of Philadelphia has been Democratic and had Democratic wins for probably nearly a century and a half now. I'm not looking that up, so I may be wrong on the exact numbers, but
I'm fact checking you right now, but I think you're pretty right. Hold
on. So when you come up with that date, let me know. The city of Philadelphia has been primarily Democrat run for a long time. The Democratic Party has a stranglehold on the politics of the city of Philadelphia. Various candidates and various folks have tried to make it a new actual multi-party system. In office right now, we have Jamie Gauthier, we have Working Families Party candidate, I'm sorry, I'm spacing on her name.
While you're looking that up, I'm just gonna 1952 is basically, since 1952, the Philadelphia has been run by a Democratic mayor. There's been no other party that has held the office of mayor. I'm sure some city council members here and there have been non-Democrats, but the city council, without looking that up, I'm going to go ahead and say has also been largely Democratic. So we're talking about, by the time Kenny's term ends, over 70 years, the city has been controlled by the Democratic Party.
Yes, and Jose DeMarco commenting on Facebook helped me out. I was looking for Kendra Brooks. Sorry, Kendra. I space on names all the time. It's not meant as an insult. So yeah, we have the Working Families Party. Mentioning of other candidate, other parties, we do have City Council member David O, the only Republican left on, well, the only party member Republican left on the City Council. I would argue that some of our City Council members that are Democrats are actually Republicans, but that's
No.
that's a longer conversation. Um, Interestingly, that's kind of the opposite of the grifter model. They're people who joined the Democratic Party but say things that Democrats don't like, and still somehow get elected. Yeah, interesting.
It's like a hostage situation, isn't it? You're like, oh well, these Democrats are really conservative, but man, like those actual conservatives or the people who call themselves conservatives are even more conservative. It's a rock and a hard place, kind of.
I
like,
wouldn't say conservative.
What do you do? You don't.
Yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't actually call them conservatives, either the Republican Party candidates or the non. I would call them capitalistic. I would say would
Yeah, I mean, as a anarchist, I can kind of consider everything conservative, like anything right of me conservative to some degree. But yeah, no, you're right. I think you touched on it. There is their main driving factor, as is the main driving factor for most American politics, is ultimately money and capitalism.
Yeah, so and the existing power structure, which some of the more progressive candidates, more progressive platforms have been pushing against. So progressives traditionally align with the Democratic Party. Here in Philadelphia, that does not have the opportunity to exist because we don't have a strong counter argument in the electorate to progressive goals. So folks can run as Democrats who believe in things like ending the eviction moratorium in the city of Philadelphia, or who believe that the tax abatement should continue for another 100 years. And don't believe in housing as a human right. We have a mayor who doesn't believe in housing as a human right. He does not support people who are unhoused or people who are disabled and who are trying to maintain housing, both through the pandemic and in general before the pandemic, or as the pandemic comes to a close with better vaccination rates and what have you. Yeah, so it's a little crazy making, and that is why primaries become so important here in the city of Philadelphia. For those of you who live outside of Philadelphia, that's why Philadelphia politics often comes down to these strange races that not everybody can participate in, and that happen off cycle, not during the general election. So yeah, how do grifters make money? There's a lot of direct action associated with stopping grifters from making money right now. Mostly right-wing grifters. There is often the plays on what people want to hear, pleas for legal defense, pleas for self-defense. They create a boogeyman. In the case of right-wing grifters, it's almost always Antifa. And you have to pronounce it the wrong way.
Brown people, trans people, anybody who's different in any way. We need to be sorry. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no. That's correct. I mean, those are all things that. So what do left-wing grifters like Talcum X do? They don't tend to create boogeymen, but they tend to latch on to a real tragedy, pull the attention away from that tragedy and onto themselves, and then raise money for that, to alleviate that tragedy, which then goes to them or their family. Yeah, so that's the making money part of grifting. So if anybody wants to, start grifting, there's plenty of good examples out there for you right now.
Yeah, the grifting sector of the economy is experiencing incredible growth.
It really is. I mean, it's huge. It's huge, and with easy payment systems like Venmo and what's the
what do you think is what do you think is worse though? Because so like on one level, like obviously right-wing grifters are really bad because they compel people to be hateful and treat their neighbors poorly and that type of thing. But on some level they're honest, you know what I mean? Like they're telling you, like, I want this money for my legal defense, I want this money for my political campaign, I want this money, whereas the left-wing grifters you're describing are like, we all need to rally up and help these people, and then they pocket the money. So like on some level, isn't that even worse? Like not that any aspect of grifting on either side is good, but I think there's
I would say that the scams are universally used. The scam of saying, hey, look at this thing, isn't this awful, now give me money so we can solve it, happens on the right-wing side too. So like there was
the fund the wall crisis thing, right? Fund
the wall is a huge one. Hey, by the way, that's an interesting one. I love that one. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So
yeah, that one's a great one.
Yeah, for those of you who've never really been interested in right-wing grifting or like thought anything about it because you didn't participate in it, you didn't get scammed, the fund the wall stuff is hilarious. It's hilarious from a completely Schadenfreude sense. If you don't like right-wing people, if you don't like the border wall, then look into the fund the wall things. It is very funny.
Yeah, that one went all the way to the top, man. That went up to like what, Steve Bannon was implicated in that. Like, that was a good one on that one.
So Steve Bannon, one of the during the time immediately following his time in the administration, in the Trump administration, participated directly in the Fund the Wall fundraising. Fund the Wall was created by just I think, if I remember correctly, he was a relatively random dude. Not like,
he was like a military service veteran that was just like, he did the right-wing grifter thing where it was like, I serve this country not for the illegals but for the people of this country, and to protect those people we need to build this wall, like,
right, but not really politically active before that, not really like dedicated to any specific, maybe jingoism, but not dedicated to, like, he wasn't in politics, he wasn't in immigration activism.
Yeah, he's one of the people that when Trump came around, like, because I was watching a bunch of really interesting documentaries, and like the one common theme that seemed to be really prevalent is like all these people going to Trump rallies did not give a fuck about politics until Donald Trump came around, which is really, like, in some ways disorienting. Like, that's the guy who got you into this shit? Like, okay, man.
Yeah.
At any rate.
So this guy, he latches onto this problem that was whole cloth created by the Trump administration, and he goes, hey, I know I will raise money for the wall. This is, a great example of this latching on to a tragedy and pulling attention from it to yourself, and then raising money for the wall. I believe he's been arrested since. If I remember correctly, he was arrested on an 82-foot yacht in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And
whose yacht? It was somebody else's yacht, though. Do you remember whose yacht it was? Do I have to
no,
look that
I
up?
don't recall off the top of, but I think he was renting it.
Okay, I'll find out. Hold on. Go on with your.
But yeah, he was arrested on this yacht. And the reason he was arrested was because the FBI and some at the behest of some folks like the FTC and other federal organizations charged with making sure that charities actually do what they're supposed to do, had found out that he and Steve Bannon and a couple of other big names in this organization had spent a large portion of the money on things like dinners and bottles of champagne and entertaining guests and renting a yacht.
Actually, no, he purchased that. I'm looking at it right now. The guy's name is Brian Kolfage, Kolfage. If anybody wants to look him up and like dig deeper into this story, because it is kind of juicy. But he actually purchased the yacht with the money that was supposed to go towards building a wall, which is, to me, I have to point this out, is just like a beautiful level of irony, because it's like you're on a boat, right? You're on a boat, right? And the boat can go around this whole like wall thing, right? Like, so you understand that boats exist. I'm just saying, man.
It would have been better if he had purchased a jet. I mean, at least then,
right?
So for folks that aren't as invested in immigration policy, the primary way that folks come to America as immigrants and then seek immigration status after they arrive, or or stay beyond when they're authorized to stay in America, is by plane. It's something like 98%.
Most illegal immigration is people overstaying work visas. They're people, like you said, who came here actually legally and then just overstayed visas. And like the really tragic thing is like the border wall, all that stuff really prevents or doesn't even prevent. All that does is make life difficult and dangerous for refugees. I think that's, again, for people who are not super invested or literate about the immigration crisis at our border. It's not an immigration crisis at our border. It's a refugee crisis caused by American foreign policy. Like, a lot of the people coming here right now are coming from Honduras. They're coming here from Honduras because we destabilized their entire national government. And so now there's, widespread political violence, cartel violence. And that's what's compelling people to travel here. And under U.S. law, so I'm going to get into this. So U.S. Constitution says that any treaty that we sign with foreign countries is U.S. law. So the U.S. law that applies in this situation is that if you are coming and seeking asylum in the United States, this is a treaty we've signed with other North America, with Canada, Mexico, we have to give them asylum. Like, that's our law, and the way to claim asylum is to come into the country and claim it, either at a legal entry or anywhere. If you just come into the country illegally across the border and claim asylum, you're not actually breaking a law. And in a lot of cases, people are I was watching a piece, I think CNN did a really good piece, where they filmed people crossing in like inflatable rafts, and then explained that when they got to the other side, they walked a quarter mile to a border patrol facility and turned themselves in. You know, this isn't people like trying to like sneak in and get away with like, you know, never, you know, like, no, they're going directly to the border patrol and going, hey, we're refugees, like, please, like, don't kill us. Like, please give us somewhere safe to be.
Right, and exactly. And also to your point about treaties, this is all part of a larger treaty that we have signed as members of the United Nations. That I think there's only 3 countries that aren't signatories to this. There's always some country that isn't a signatory to everything, but and it's usually America. But anyway,
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right.
but we are signatories to the treaty that is against nationlessness, which is attempting to resolve there's a worldwide humanitarian crisis about people who are refugees. It's happening all over the world because climate change is the primary driving factor. I know that's a relatively liberal position, but climate change is the primary driving factor.
Well, climate change is also, in addition, like American imperialism too, because if you look at like in the Middle East, all the refugees from there are coming from a destabilized region that was destabilized by American foreign policy during the Cold War.
And American imperialism also is driving climate change, and a lot of the reasons for the destabilizations is because of climate change, because we're trying to access resources that we don't have access to. Etc. So all of these things are tied into each other. It gets a little wild when you really look at it. But yeah, so we're signatories to this UN agreement to try and end nationlessness, which is why the folks coming from Honduras are, in theory, guaranteed a home wherever they land. They're supposed to be able to come to the U.S. and seek asylum because their homes in Honduras are not viable for them, for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter.
You could also get into how MS-13 was essentially created by the U.S. military too, but that's a whole nother tangent for a whole nother day.
Yeah. Just wanting to wrap up, one of the upshot of this whole immigration discussion and how it has to do with Philadelphia elections is that one of the big key components of the Krasner versus Vega argument was that Vega definitely supported a return to cooperation with the Immigration and Naturalization Services, DHS, or ICE, however, whatever acronym you want to ascribe to them. Krasner supports us being a sanctuary city, and that is as it should be under constitutional law. We have a separation of powers for a reason, and there is no time when the city of Philadelphia should be calling the federal government to inform them that we've arrested somebody for jaywalking, and that they might be an illegal immigrant or might be here without immigration status, as is the correct term. So
yeah, also another sort of interesting sort of legal ripple to this is, as I recall, I haven't like reread the Constitution super thoroughly recently, but as I recall, there's actually nowhere in the Constitution that explicitly states the federal government has any power to enforce immigration in the first place. So that's even a little legally dubious in its own right. But anyway, go on.
So yeah, but I mean, you aside from that legal dubiousness, we need to always consider the fact that over the course of history, immigration has always supported a better economy, and we're coming out of a time when not only did we lose massive numbers of population, but we're coming out of a time when our economy needs support from new members, and the immigration community is that group of new members. You know, I am the son and grandson of immigrants. Lots of people here in the United States are the children or descendants of immigrants. I'm also the great grandson of enslaved people. So yeah, it's you know, the fight against immigration really is a fight for a return to slavery, and whether that be wage slavery or chattel slavery hasn't been determined yet, but that is what the fight is. People want a source of free or cheap labor, and they don't want to feel that they have to support that labor with fair wages and fairness in equality and justice. So on that happy note, I'm going to wrap up the broadcast. It's 11:04. Thanks for joining us again on the coffee break chat. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Really appreciate anytime you can drop by. Any closing thoughts?
I mean, we covered a lot of ground with this. I would say, you know, my biggest thing from today's discussion is, like, you know, people who maybe don't know as much about immigration and aren't as literate on those topics. It would be beneficial for you, for even if you have no interest in like the people who this directly affects, the ancillary effects and how it sort of creates, like you were saying, competition in job markets, which is really a race to the bottom by treating these people as subhuman, like, you know, and then how they're used as a boogeyman to distract people from, you know, the fact that these companies are taking advantage of not only those people, but also American citizens who their wages are driven down by this, you know, competition, as it were. Like if everybody were sort of treated like human beings with dignity by employers, we would have a lot less of these issues. So, you know, get literate on these topics, even if it's not specifically because you care about the human rights of people from other countries, like you probably should. You know, also for the economic impacts that it has in this country, immigrants are not in any way hurting our economy. Historically, immigrants have always been a boon to our economy. The entire American economy is built on excuse me, immigrants coming here and starting businesses and, you know, providing growth and new products and services to their communities. So, like, you know, it's a really important topic, and it's a good one to get literate on. And yeah, that's sort of what I would encourage people to take away from today. In addition to the, you know, don't get taken by grifters.
So thanks again, Chris. Thank you to my audience for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to us on Facebook, YouTube. Hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Really helps the messages get out there, helps us to talk to more people. Subscribe to us on Patreon. We have levels as low as $1 a month. And that Patreon subscription, we do publish things on exclusively to our Patreon subscribers that are little glimpses of what we have coming up in the future, that are things that aren't necessarily going out on broadcast anytime in the future, or even you know, currently. So you get a little insider information, and you can interact with us via Patreon. and join us and, you know, suggest stories, talk to us about what you want to see covered, get your message out, and use this platform that we built to platform yourself and get your message out to the public. Thanks again for joining us. Tune in next Wednesday. We will have another broadcast next Wednesday, and the following Wednesday, 2 more broadcasts, and then we're going to take a short break for 6 weeks, and we will be back to broadcasting every week after that. But really appreciate you tuning in. And like I said, please join us again next week, 10 a.m. For another coffee break chat. Thanks.